Welcome to today's class. And before we move into a topic and the lesson proper, I have a question. What are the negative effects of crude oil? I will always refer back to the previous classes. There was one of our classes that the induction question was, can we do without crude oil? And now we're looking at what are the negative effects of crude oil. Does it mean that as much as we cannot do without crude oil, it has some negative effect, some negative impact on us? So we're going to be looking at the negative effect of crude oil on the society, on the environment, on we humans, on plants, on animals. So that is the focus, the fulcrum of our lesson today. So this will lead us to a topic which is environmental impact of crude oil and petrochemicals. The environmental impacts of crude oil and petrochemicals. And just a quick recap, but if you have not listened, if you have not seen those previous classes, go over and see them. So we have looked at crude oil, and crude oil is a derivative of fossil fuel, and we have looked at how we can get our crude oil, where it is gotten, the formation, the exploration, the extraction, and how you separate it, how you take them to the refineries, you separate them, conversion and purification. And we talked about also our petrochemicals, that there are derivatives of crude oil. That means what we get from crude oil. Those are what we refer to as petrochemicals. So at the end of today's class, you should be able to mention the impact of crude oil on the environment. That is the negative, when we're talking about the impact, now the negative impact of crude oil on the environment. And when we're talking about environment, humans inclusive, because we are staying in the environment, then you should be able to discuss how to remediate and mitigate these impacts. How do we solve these solutions, or how do we prevent this impact, this environmental impact that we have? How do we prevent them? And you should be able to recognize the importance of alternative energy sources, because we know that our crude oil is one of the major energy sources that we have. So now that we know that it has a negative impact on the environment, we should be able to know why, the importance, why we need alternative energy sources, and you're going to see those ones. So we have mentioned this earlier in one of our classes when we looked at resources from non-living things. So if you have not seen that, please quickly go over to click on it before so you will understand the progression of this lesson. So now over to our lesson today. Why crude oil and petrochemicals have numerous applications. So and their usage has significant environmental consequences. So we have looked at their various applications before in our previous classes. So, but it doesn't stop it from its environmental consequences. It has significant, not just something that it's not minute. It's not something you can just keep aside. So the environmental consequences, negative impact is significant. And so that's why we are studying it. Crude oil and petrochemical usage has significant environmental impact that need to be understood and addressed. Well, at the time you understand those environmental impacts, you'll be able to address them. So in this section, we're going to explore the environmental consequences associated with the extraction. So it's not just only about the maybe the carrying from the extraction, it has an impact. The production, there's an impact, and also the usage, there's an impact. Even in we using it, it has a negative impact on the environment. And also, we're going to look at this very quickly in this lesson. Number one is air pollution. Air pollution. So we know that most of this energy are being used, most of this crude oil are used as energy. Most of the things we got in this crude oil are refined into and are used as energy. So, and this energy are combusted in the engines of either our cars, our vehicles, heavy duties, trucks, trains, jets, and the rest. So this leads to combustion of fossil fuels. Combustion of fossil fuels, so such as gasoline. And when I talk about gasoline, I'm talking about petroleum and diesel derived from crude oil. They release pollutants into the atmosphere, and these pollutants include your carbon dioxide. I hope you know that carbon dioxide is not something that is if you have excess of carbon dioxide and you have less oxygen, it will affect you. You will die in the process because you are not respirating. What you need to survive as human is oxygen, not carbon dioxide. It is plants that uses carbon dioxide. So if you are having more of carbon dioxide, it might have a negative impact on your health, which we are going to look at in the course of this sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is very toxic. Same thing with nitrogen oxide. These are very toxic components that can be gotten from the combustion of this fossil fuel in particulate matter. And when they are released into the air, when these pollutants, we're talking about your carbon dioxide that are gotten from combustion of fossil fuel, from sulfur dioxide and from your nitrogen, if they are released into the air, they contribute to air pollution, to smoke formation. It's not like the cloud is smoking some kind of, and because of this smoke that are released into the air, and respiratory problems in humans and animals. So it will not only affect humans, it will also affect animals. So animals are inclusive in this. And when, for example, in the process, you can inhale benzene, you can inhale toluene, you can inhale formaldehyde, and they are all released from crude oil. This can irritate and inflame the respiratory system through the production of reactive oxygen species, and they contribute to respiratory symptoms such as wheezing. That is, you are gasping for breath, you're wheezing, coughing. Coughing is not just, even coughing, normal coughing sometimes is because you inhale some smoke. When you inhale some smoke, you start coughing, you find yourself coughing, and sometimes you experience shortness of breath. If the place is choked up with smoke or some gas, you see that you want fresh air, you start opening window because you want to breathe, and it can lead to shortness of breath. And invariably, if care is not taken, if there's not enough ventilation, it can lead to death. So it's a very serious air pollutant. So you can see that it has a negative impact on our environment. Emissions from vehicles and industrial processes are major sources of air pollution associated with crude oil and petrochemical usage. Sometimes when your car or your vehicle is driving at the back of another truck or car that is emitting smoke, you see that you want your driver to speed past that vehicle so that you can breathe fresh air. Sometimes maybe you enter a vehicle and the smoke is entering, the exhaust is entering into the vehicle, you start feeling irritated, your eyes start itching you. So it has all these emissions from vehicles, and they are major source of air pollutions, and which can affect us as human and also the environment. The next we have is water pollution. Water pollution. So we talked about it not just affecting maybe the final product from the extraction, and you know that this crude oil is extracted, this fossil fuel is extracted from the ocean. So accidental oil spills during transportation, maybe by the time you are transporting it from the drill region, from the drilling site to your refinery, so during the process of extraction and storage, it poses a significant threat to the water ecosystem. It can lead to the ecosystem having an imbalance. So oil spills contaminate rivers, lakes, oceans, and wetland, leading to the death of aquatic organisms, destruction of habitat, and long-term ecological damage. So when this oil spills, these are heavy chemicals we're talking about here. When they spill into the ocean, or they spill into the river, or the lakes, or the wetlands, aquatic animal organisms, that is when we talk about aquatic water organisms, that is organisms that lives in water like fish, the crabs, shrimps, and other organisms, tortoises and the rest, they die in the process because they need to exchange. Do not forget that I said this thing contains hydrocarbon. And when we're talking about hydrocarbon, we're talking about hydrogen and carbon. And what do living things need to survive? Oxygen. So these living things inside the water cannot no longer breathe in oxygen. And so they die, they suffocate in the process. And they die. It will destroy the habitat. That is their habitat, that is their house, that's where they live. So the oil spillage destroy their habitat and can have a long-term ecological damage that those animals, that ecosystem may not be balanced again for a very long time. And also, we have petrochemicals used in various industries can also enter water bodies through improper disposal practices, industrial waste, and runoff from agricultural activities. Now, away from the refinery sites or from the drilling sites in the ocean, some of these waste products gotten from these petrochemicals are released back into the water system. They pass the pipe to the water, and once these wastes are disposed in the water, it can lead to the destruction of habitat, and also the aquatic organisms there can die in the process. When we're talking about industrial waste, like heavy chemicals gotten from these petrochemicals, gotten from this crude oil, when you release them back in the ocean, run off from agricultural activities. Do not forget, if you have seen our previous video, we talked about the production of fertilizer from this crude oil. So when they have been, you have used them, and there's a rainfall, and they are being washed back into the ocean, or back into the lake, or back into the streams, or as you have it, the river body, the water bodies, they contaminate the water, they contaminate the ecosystem, and it can destruct a lot of things in the ecosystem. So number 3 is habitat destruction. So habitat destruction, the exploration and extraction of crude oil often involve clearing large areas of land, including forests and natural habitats, leading to habitat loss and displacement of wildlife. So by the time you want to have your refinery, you have to clear a large plot of land. We're not just talking of 1 acre here, many acres of land to be able to put up a functioning refinery. So in the process, we are losing our forests and natural habitat, leading to habitat loss and displacement of, and so many wildlife and some animals will be displaced, and some of them you might not even see them again. And that's what we call them, that those animals, they have gone into extinction, and this is as a result of crude oil extraction and exploration. So pipelines, drilling platforms, and other infrastructure can disrupt ecosystem and affecting the natural balance of flora and fauna. If you have looked at, or if you have seen our various in the previous class, in the video, we said that your pipeline can either, or your drilling platform can either go vertically. That is, your drilling platform can either go vertically or horizontally, and in the process, you're going to displace some ecosystem, whether in the water or on the land. So, and pipelines that are passed, in the previous class we talked about transportation. By the time you've drilled and you've explored your crude oil, and you want to take them to your refinery site, what do? Is that you transport them using truck or some special vehicles, or through pipelines. And most time pipelines are used to transport crude oil from the drilling site to refineries. You're going to pass these pipelines through some habitats, through the forest, and you have to clear those forests. You have to clear, so it has affected, it has disrupted that ecosystem, and it will affect the natural balance of flora. When we are talking about flora, the plants that live in that particular habitat will be taken out of it. So, and some of these species, you might not have them again. And also the fauna. We're talking about fauna, we're talking about animals that stays in that particular habitat. They get killed in the process, or their habitats are being destroyed. The next, it leads to climate change. The burning of fossil fuels, including crude oil and petrochemical, is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, primary carbon dioxide. And we all know by now that excessive carbon dioxide is poisonous to our system as human. So and this burning of fossil fuel is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emission. And when we're talking about this greenhouse gas emission, we are talking about the chlorofluorocarbon. So greenhouse gases trap heat in the earth's atmosphere, leading to global warming and climate change. We're going to see the effect of global warming and climate change in the course of this study. So when those greenhouse gases, they are trapped in the atmosphere, they trap heat there, and to lead to global warming, the melting of what sheets the suns that sheet the heat from the sun. So it began to melt, leading to global warming and climate change, because once that sheet is melting, there's a direct impact of the sun on the earth. So the direct impact is what leads to global warming and climate change. Climate change impacts include rising sea levels. When there's global warming, it leads to climate change, and it includes rising sea level. And this rising sea level can cause destructive erosion. It's not just normal erosion that maybe when rain fall and it just pass through. No, destructive erosion. It destroys wherever it's passing, the water passes through, because there's high level of the sea is melting. So it's dry, and you cannot catch water. It just have to flow. It has to flow. And so any part, and sometimes when water passes through a place, you will know that water has passed through, because it's going to make a path through it. So destructive erosion, wetland flooding, it floods the environment, aquifer and agricultural soil contamination with salt. Sea waters and some ocean water are salty. And some of these plants don't need salt. They don't need excess salt. And when these salts are deposited on this land, it makes the land infertile. And now agricultural soils are contamination, loss of habitat for fish. Some fish get lost in the process. They lost their habitat, birds and plants. Of course, when there's erosion, some plants it will be eroded alongside. So you're going to lose some plants some plants will lose their habitat in the process. It altered weather patterns. It increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. That's why sometimes we have extreme radiation from the sun, because the chlorofluorocarbon has escaped into the sky, and they're causing heat, now leading to global warming. And there's nothing shielding, the sheet is melting, and so we're having direct impact of sunlight. And so you say this weather is too harsh. You have extreme cold, extreme sun radiation upon the earth, and disruption to ecosystem and biodiversity. Number 5 is oil spills. Major oil spills from tanker accidents or offshore drilling can have catastrophic consequences for marine life and coastal environment. I said earlier on in our previous class that you can either transport your crude oil from the drilling site to your refinery using your truck. And so in the process of transport, there can be accident. The tanker might have an accident, and then there's oil spillage. And the oil spillage, maybe whether on the dry land, when rain falls, it will wash it back to the ocean. So marine life are affected, the coastal environment are affected. So the spilled oil can coat the feathers and fur of animals, leading to suffocation, ingestion of toxic substances, and long-term damage to the ecosystem. So the animals are affected. It can coat their feathers, it can coat their fur, and when it coats their feathers or their fur, it leads to suffocation. They suffocate, they cannot breathe. They ingest it, they eat it, they drink it, and it affects them. It affects their body system, and in the process, they die, and it can cause a long-term damage to ecosystems. Deforestation. We can our pipelines, the pipelines and some drilling forums are passed through some lands, and so it leads to deforestation. And what is deforestation? When you cut that tree and you are not replacing it. And you know that trees have a lot of advantage to our environment. So petrochemicals such as plastics are derived from fossil fuel and require significant amounts of feedstock, including natural gas and crude oil. Extraction and process of these resources often contribute to deforestation as land is cleared for exploration and infrastructure development. I know you have not quickly forgotten from our previous class that we get some of our plastic from petrochemicals, and that is derived from fossil fuel. And if you're going to have a company to process this, to exploit this, you have to clear a large sum of land, forest. So you are deforesting, you are cutting down trees, you are felling trees, and you are not replacing them. It will have adverse effects on our environment. So we also have waste generation. The production and disposal of petrochemical-based products generates substantial amounts of waste, including plastic waste. So improper disposal of plastic leads to pollution in landfills, water bodies, and oceans, causing harm to wildlife and marine ecosystem. If you get to the bank of some rivers, you see so many plastics there. Plastic cannot decay. Unlike our paper can decay. Unlike wood can decay. But plastic, they cannot decay. So if you keep it there, you will still find them there after many years. So it leads to environmental pollution. You go to get some landfills and you find some heaps of plastic. They cannot decay. So it causes harm to wildlife and marine ecosystem. Explosion, environment. The next is environmental accidents. Oil refineries and petrochemical plants are susceptible to accidents in as much as they are moving. Even if they are not moving online, through the pipe, sometimes the pipe leaks. So in the process, they are susceptible to accidents. They can susceptible to explosion. If there's something that can trigger them to light up, immediately they will explode. So leaks can explode. When a tanker carrying petrol, carrying gasoline, when it's have an accident and maybe in head-on collision, there's an explosion and a lot of people are killed in the process. It can lead to fire outbreak, which can be severe. It can cause severe environmental consequences. Even if it was still in the forest, there's a fire outbreak from accident from all these tankers, or from leaks from the pipe or the drills carrying this thing, and there's an explosion. It's going to affect the wildlife living in that environment. The soil will be affected, because in the process of the soil burning, that is the fuel burning in the soil, some nutrients are lost in the process. So it affects every aspect of the habitat. So this incident releases hazardous chemicals. So apart from it even burning, maybe causing harm to human, if you have ever been in an incident, or you've seen an incident where there's an explosion of petroleum, you see a thick cloud in the sky, a very thick black cloud in the sky that you can sight from afar. So those chemicals that are released into either the air or the water or the soil, they endanger human health and damage the ecosystem. So now that we have seen that the crude oil, as much as it's essential to us, they have negative impact on our environment. What can we do? How can we remediate this, and how can we mitigate it? So remediation is talking about looking for a way to find a solution to the already problem that is on ground due to this negative impact of crude oil. Mitigation is preventing it from it happening again. So number one is spill response and cleanup. In the event of an oil spill, perhaps at the drilling site or the site of exploration or at the refinery site, prompt and effective response is crucial. Techniques such as containment booms, skimmers, and dispersants can be used to contain and remove spilled oil from water surfaces. So if there's a quick response to clean up this contaminants from the ocean or from the event from the spot of the oil spillage, you're going to save a lot of things. The water body, the ecosystem will be saved, and the aquatic organisms living in the waters too will be saved. They won't die in the process. They won't be affected in the process. So shoreline cleanup techniques like manual labor and use of solvents can help remove oil from affected coastlines. The next is environmental restoration. We have learned that in the process of refining or getting a useful product from crude oil, there's deforestation. So deforestation and loss of habitat. So after an oil spill or other environmental damage and deforestation, efforts can be made to restore the affected ecosystem. This may involve actions such as replanting vegetations in areas where there is deforestation, reintroducing native species, some animals that are lost in the process or that lost their habitat in the process. You can take them to a new environment. or you can reintroduce those species into that environment, and rehabilitating affected habitat to promote ecological recovery. The next is enhanced oil spill prevention and safety measures. Stringent regulations and safety protocols can be implemented to minimize the risk of oil spills. This includes regular inspections, maintenance of equipment, improved safety standards, and the use of advanced technologies to detect and respond to potential spills more effectively. There are advanced technologies that have been put in place by scientists that can help to detect potential oils before it happens. You can detect this is okay, this pipeline is faulty, this drill is faulty, and to mitigate it before there's an oil spillage. Then transition to cleaner energy sources. During one of our objectives is that why it is important for us to look out source for another energy source. So we and I told us in one of our classes, if you've seen the video, we talked about alternative. When we're looking at resources gotten from non-living things, we look at alternative energy source apart from crude oil, and we have example like solar. You can get your solar energy, wind, hydroelectric power. That hydro we're talking about getting from water. So, and can help reduce reliance on crude oil and petrochemicals for energy generation. All these other alternative sources can generate energy. So we can divert our attention to this alternative, thereby reducing reliance on crude oil and also the negative impact. This transition can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts associated with fossil fuel combustion. Number 5 is energy efficiency and conservation. Energy efficiency and conservation. Promoting energy efficiency measures across various sectors, including transportation, buildings, and industrial processes. This can reduce the overall demand for crude oil and petrochemicals. Energy conservation practices such as optimizing energy use and reducing waste can also contribute to mitigating environmental impact. Number 6 is waste reduction and recycling. So implement waste reduction strategies and promote recycling of petrochemical-based products, particularly plastic. Plastic can be recycled. So instead of producing more plastic from petrochemicals, you can recycle the available plastic. It will help mitigate to stop the accumulation of these waste products. So encouraging the use of reusable products, supporting recycling programs, and promoting circular economy practices can help reduce the environmental impact of petrochemical waste. The next we have on our list is sustainable transportation. So sustainable transportation, we can introduce electric vehicles, EVs. From the video you have, that is an electric vehicle tapping current from an electric source. So there are electric vehicles. You don't need to use your petrol, you don't need your gasoline, you don't need your diesel, you don't need your jet fuel, that is your kerosene. So the community or the society should be encouraged to use electric vehicles as an alternative to crude oil. Also biofuels or hydrogen as an alternative to crude oil. Investing in EV charging infrastructure, promoting carpooling and biking, and supporting sustainable urban planning can help reduce the reliance on fossil fuel-based transportation. Then the next is environmental regulations and enforcement. So if there are stringent environmental regulations enacted and enforced, maybe to govern the extraction process, to govern the refining process, the transportation, and the usage of crude oil and petrochemicals. If there are regular monitoring and inspections, there will be their impact will be reduced on the society. So we also have awareness and education. So I haven't learned so far about the negative impact of crude oil on our environment. It is necessary that we raise public awareness about these environmental impacts. So you've been educated. You can educate other persons. So communities, NGOs, government bodies, businesses should be enlightened about the sustainable practices and the importance of energy conservation, and also the benefits of transitioning to cleaner alternatives. We already know the negative impact, so it is important, it is very important, of necessity, that we educate and we create awareness of the negative impact of crude oil on our environment. And when I'm talking about environment, we humans, we are part of it, because we are living also in the environment. So we've come to the end of the class, but before we go, we are going to look at a question. Before we look at the question, I just want to do a quick recap on what we have learned. We have looked at the negative impact of crude oil on our environment, and we've seen that it has a huge impact on the environment, ranging from our health to the general environment. I mean, the air, the land, the sea, and it has a negative impact on us. And we have looked at the way to remediate and mitigate these consequences, these impacts on the environment. So very quickly, I'm going to move on to the ExamGuide app, and we're going to look at a question, as I promised, because I want you to check out other questions at the end of this. I don't want you to just sit down and just relax. Check out other questions by yourself. And you know, we are studying crude oil, so you click on crude oil, and I'm going to attempt that one question. And the question is, one of the adverse effects of crude oil in Nigeria is A, technological development, B, revenue generation, C, educational expansion, D, poverty in rural areas, and E, employment opportunities. Fortunately, D is our answer: poverty in rural areas. Some of these areas where this crude oil are extracted for, they are poor, the environment are poor, because they've lost their livelihood, that is fishing, because the water bodies are affected, and the aquatic organism in that environment, they are died, and so they have lost their livelihood, and their farmland is bad. It has been contaminated with soil. They cannot plant crops there, and so it has affected that place. The oil, the environment, the air is bad, the breathing contaminated air, and the general environment is affected. So there's poverty in rural areas, those areas affected by where crude oil are being drilled. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives detailed explanations of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn a particular topic of interest with different modes, like study modes, mock modes, and practice modes. It has other features that make learning fun. It is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, and share the video with others that will benefit from it. Bye for now.